Hello and welcome to Tailored Talent. Eric Walczykowski here, host of Tailored Talent and CEO of Bespoke Partners. Today, I'm joined with Ryan Tognazzini. Togs, as we like to call him, he is a partner at ETJ Life, a new business that has started up. Togs, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Well, I think one of the things that we're here to talk about today is this notion of founder transitions, being the second CEO, following the founder. Talk to me a little bit about your career journey and why we're here and why you're the expert in these second CEO transitions.
Sure. Well, hardly an expert, but have definitely lived through it. Yeah, I was lucky enough to follow a founder when I became a CEO. And when we were thinking about, what to do next, my partner Matt and Randall and Bob, we all sat and we're talking about, what are some things that we can do to kind of give back to the community. And this concept of following a founder and being, especially a first-time CEO, and what that looks like, our sort of premise was you can do it without killing yourself and damaging your life and your personal life. And so we founded ETJ Life really to focus on both head and heart, and working with private equity-backed CEOs on helping them be successful in business and in life, because it's an incredibly demanding job, and it can be even more difficult sometimes to follow a founder. And so I've been spending a lot of my time focusing on that.
No, fantastic. And look, I mean, both you and I have a ton of founder transition experience. And I think the comment you said as well, I'm hardly an expert. I mean, the reality of it is each opportunity, each instance takes a life of its own, because each founder is unique. To be a founder of a successful business, you've got to have a bunch of interesting characteristics. That said, talk to me a little bit about some things that you can keep your head and heart aligned moving forward, but yet still successfully transition that founder and lead a company.
Yeah, and yes, founders are incredibly unique, which is what makes them founders. I think the key things that we typically focus on, we've got a whole kind of rubric and process, which is the second CEO operating system. But if you think about boiling it down, a CEO owns a couple of things. They own culture, strategy, team, and the execution of that strategy. And so at least initially, when we start working with people who are going to succeed a founder, one of the first questions is, what's the founder going to do? Are they staying? Are they going? If they're staying, what's their role going to be? How can you step in and honor their legacy, but also make sure that you kind of put your stamp on, running the organization, and do it while the founder can still operate in the business, or if the founder's leaving, et cetera. And a lot of that has to do with focusing on the culture and, what are your values? How do those demonstrate or represent with the values that exist in the organization today? And like I said, how can you honor the legacy that founder has kind of put in place, but also, move forward with your own leadership style?
No doubt the second CEO and EQ is so important in that transition, because I think you really do have to empathetically listen to the founder, what their vision is for the organization, align that with your values, your vision, and how you go through that transition. But culture is so important. Talk to me a little bit about understanding the culture that the founder has set up, and then also being able to navigate or transition that into something that might be scalable.
Yeah, well, I think, it depends on what is the culture of the business and the culture of that founder. In honoring that, there are good things and great things that come from, if you have a successful business, or a business that is scaled to a certain point that you're taking over, something went right, and some things that the founder was doing went right. We're big fans of using things like DISC and EQI or StrengthsFinder. I know you guys used Hogan with some of your candidates in the past, but understanding, like, what are your leadership qualities? What is your EQ as a leader? What is your style? And then how do you take that style and sort of magnify or amplify it in the organization? You don't have to be the founder. You don't have to behave like the founder. You can have your own attributes and your own skill sets. And so we focus a lot on, making sure that you really have a good understanding of your sense of self, and how to really input that into the business in a way that's beneficial for you as the new CEO.
No doubt. And look, one of the things that I found in common through all of the founder transitions I've led or have participated on as a board member is many times the founder has set up an organization that's built to serve them and their dynamic leadership, solve all the problems. And that also leads to a culture where folks are maybe afraid to make mistakes. And so one of the big things I found, at least in culture transitions, is really empowering others in the organization to make decisions, because you've really got to me, to scale, you've got to have an organization full of decision makers and people who aren't afraid to make mistakes. Would you agree with that observation around founder transitions?
100%. I mean, I had people asking me if they could buy, $20 Starbucks gift cards because somebody did something great in their department, and it was because the founder was in control of every penny that was spent. And so I do agree. I think the other thing that's important if you're assuming the role as a new CEO is the team. And what is it? What is the composition of the team today? What we're seeing in most cases is half to 2/3 of the team, the ELT changes in the first 12 months of a new CEO. And so, what got you here won't necessarily get you there. And one of the questions that, we love to ask new CEOs is as you kind of close your eyes and think about maybe you're going to be in an exit opportunity 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now, is who's sitting around the table with you? And of the team that's here, do they have the ability to be sitting at the table with you and lead you through a process, lead you through a transition, and do all the things that are needed to do to get this next phase of the business off and running successfully?
No doubt. And I'm so glad you went to team next, because you've got culture and team. And the other thing I found in these founder transitions is many times you inherit people on the team that are sometimes family members or like family members. And so it's this notion where you're walking into an organization. My last founder transition, I did about 6 months of due diligence on the organization ahead of time, but still you don't know what you don't know until you're living there every day. And so when you think about team navigation, I think it's really interesting. You started with, well, what's the founder's future role? And I think that impacts how you navigate the team and how quickly you navigate the team. But talk to me a little bit about this, because there's this notion that said, hey, hire slow, fire fast, move the team around, all that kind of stuff. But I think sometimes when that founder's still involved with the organization, you've got to balance that age-old adage of moving people on quickly and getting going versus taking people on the journey and helping them come to the answer. Would you agree with that? Any examples on that? Or
yes, I think so. There is like, you get in and there's this listening tour that everybody likes to talk about in their first 90 days, and I think people generally make decisions pretty quickly on whether or not so and so is going to make it, or this person seems like they have a lot of potential. Maybe they could be in a different seat, and you're sort of getting your thoughts together around that. What I find is that sometimes people try and make decisions too quickly. Or it's unclear what they're making a decision for. Well, this person's not going to work out. Okay, but if you go out and look for the new person, like, what is the scorecard? What is this person actually going to look like on paper, so that you know it when you find it? I will say, yes, it is tough, and you got to navigate the waters, especially if the founder stays involved. But to a person, I've never heard anybody say, I moved too quickly. It's almost always the opposite, where I wish I just would have gone fast. I wish I would have moved faster. I wish I would have made that decision on that person faster, because in the end, I just wasted time. So there's a balance of, this isn't the right person, but also having clarity of what is the right person. Like, what is that person actually really going to look like?
For sure. No doubt. And I think it truly is a delicate process, because I've done both, where I've transitioned the team within the first 90 days. And there are some elements where I look back and I'm like, well, how much trust did I destroy with the founder in that process, versus what I've done in other situations, whereas I help the founder come to the conclusion that this person needs to move on as well. And so as we talked about, this is artistry. I don't think there's a right answer, because each situation takes on its own aspect. But being thoughtful, empathetic through the process is truly important. We talked about culture, we talked about team. Let's talk about strategy now, because that's the other element that the CEO truly owns. Talk to me about the balance of having the team in place to help develop the strategy versus what I find a lot of times, you're building the plane and flying the plane at the same time.
Well, I mean, and you have to, especially if you're assuming the role from somebody else. And, we work exclusively with private equity backed CEOs. And so where are you in the hold period? What was the original value creation plan? How's that going? Are we on track? Did the whole thing implode? And that's why you're here, and you've got to kind of pick up the pieces and move on. So I think one of the things that I see a lot of is, in your first, if not your second board meeting as the CEO, the board kind of wants to hear from you on, okay, like, what is the new value creation plan, or what are the 3 things that you're really going to go focus on that you see big opportunities? Sometimes it's kind of obvious when they come in. Sometimes they need to figure that out a little bit. But there's a big component of, what is the plan, and are you able to successfully articulate that to the board, and most importantly to the employees? A lot of times all this change happens and people are moving around at the top, and folks like at the individual contributor level are sort of like, what's going on? And FUD starts to creep in and everything else. So your ability to articulate clearly, these are the most important things that we're going to go do. Here's why we're doing them. Here's how we're going to go do them, and have like a really clear plan. It makes life so much easier.
No, fantastic. Well, look, I think we've crushed the strategy, culture, team aspects of the CEO job. Let's talk a little bit more about what's going on at ETJ Life. I'm lucky enough to be part of the initial cohort for folks that are following a founder. Talk to me a little bit about the strategy there and what you're doing for folks.
Yeah, so we work with exclusively private equity backed CEOs, as I mentioned, and we have two programs. One is for what we call navigators, and those are for active CEOs. And our focus is on helping them be the best CEO they can be, while also still living a great personal life and making sure they're paying attention to things like their family and their spouse and their friends and their health and all of those things. The second group we have are sages, and those are, the ones who are leaving or sort of, retiring or moving on from being day-to-day operators. And the focus there is much more focused on life strategy. What am I going to do with the next 20, 30 years of my life? I've got lots of good years left, and how do I want to spend them? And so our work is really focused on both of those types of people. So in this example we're talking about here, where a founder's leaving, somebody new is coming in, the founder could go and be part of our Sage program. The person who's coming in would be part of the Navigator program. And again, our focus is really on holistically coaching these folks, helping them avoid some of the mistakes that maybe we made as first-time CEOs and as active CEOs, but also helping them with things like life and some of the things that are really important to you outside of work. I'm a big fan of the work to live versus live to work moniker, and that's really what we embody at ETJ.
No, fantastic. And look, I think the most successful people understand that they're at their best when their best is needed. And I think the aspects that you talk about within the different vectors of life and being very intentional about those vectors at different times is important. Talk to me a little bit about some of the vectors you deal with. For me, the CEO who's navigating, still sitting in the seat, but things like health and family and other things. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat of choose your own adventure. I mean, we're going to ask a lot of questions, but financial, health, relationships, where you live, how you live. I mean, all of those things are part of the vectors of kind of our life vectors, if you will. Faith is another one. And then on the business side, I mean, it's the culture, strategy, team, process, the board, and navigating all of those things, and like, how do you be a great operator? And oftentimes we start, and it's just as simple as, give us your honest assessment of like where you think things stand for you personally. How are you doing at all these things? And sometimes it's like, I feel pretty good here, I'm not great here, I've done nothing over here with charity or faith, or I'm not spending enough time with my kids, I'm traveling too much, I'm not getting to the gym enough, I'm not building enough cohesion with my team. So it somewhat depends on kind of what is near and dear to that individual's kind of current state. And we often go from there and help them start to pay attention to more of those things and help them work to prioritize.
No, that's fantastic. And look, I mean, there's this old saying that it's lonely at the top. And I think one of the most attractive pieces of my involvement in the organization is just the peer-based relationships that are developed, and people that are sitting in the same chairs or having sat in the same chairs as you and being able to operate as a sounding board. But look, people still navigating are very busy people. Talk to me a little bit about the tactical flow of that. How does that work? How does one engage as part of the navigating group?
Yeah, so we typically have a designated coach who does weekly or biweekly calls with the individual. That's one-on-one, and then we have community events that are usually monthly, and that's an opportunity to get everybody together in that peer network that you're talking about. I was in YPO for a long time. Matt, my partner, was in World 50 for a long time, and we love that community aspect. We do ours a little bit differently, and we're focusing on things that are sort of crowdsourced from the community, if you will. So we've got a number of CEOs right now who are getting ready to go run a process to raise capital. And so bringing in people to kind of speak and chat around what that looks like, how to pick a banker, how to pick a new partner, and what are some of the criteria that you might want to think about. We're doing fireside chats on AI and the emergence and what that means, for operating a business. And so really it's an opportunity for the community to get to know each other, but it's also an opportunity for everybody to learn and focus on things that are sort of urgent right now. And get a chance to talk through some of those things. And, we're not the board, we're not part of the sponsorship. We have no fiduciary responsibility to these companies. And so it's a place that everyone can just kind of lay it out and not have to worry about, what they say or how they said it.
No, fantastic. And look, I think in the last month, you all hosted a fireside chat with two sitting PE managing directors. And as all of us are managing PE sponsored companies, it was invaluable to be able to talk to an MD at a PE firm that wasn't your sponsor, to get some insight and wisdom. And I think it was just a really fruitful conversation. And what has been very impressive to me is just you meet people where they're at and what they're working on today. So invaluable, great idea.
Yeah.
fun to see.
The mission of our firm when we started it was high joy, high impact. And so we want to have fun doing it and make an impact on others, and they should feel the same about being a part of our community. And it's as simple as that. So we're trying to live that every day.
High joy, high impact is a hell of a way to live a life, and I'm really proud to be a part of your group. And Togs, I just truly appreciate you joining today, talking about Second CEO and sharing what's going on at ETJ Life and how you can help private equity CEOs. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.